Long ago, in the lands of blood and ice, the mighty Thor enters the fray, with deceitful Loki in tow. Our story begins with these gods' graceful refuge from the elements at a mere mortal's farm. Understandably, the humble farmer owner, Thialfi, had not the food required for such a god's banquet. Fear not, Thor decrees, for his mighty goat, Tengrisnir, heroically offers his meat as substance. As the night rages on, Thor asks to be excused for but a moment, not before demanding for poor Tengrisnir's bones to be left unharmed. Loki had other plans. His twisted mind persuades the young farmer to break and gain sustenance from Tengrisnir's bones. Unbeknownst to Thor, amidst the following morning, the illustrious use of his hammer Mjolnir is in full display. Swiftly, the mighty goat Tengrisnir is reanimated, albeit with a key difference. With a hearty shriek, the beast topples from the weight upon its freshly broken leg. For unfortunate Thialfi, a year of servitude serves as the only restitution. With the grieving farmer's sister tending to Tengrisnir, the tale finds our protagonists conquering the landscape in their quest. Well, that is, if conquering translates to running from the undead, hiding from the dwarves, shaking in the midst of the ice trolls, and last but not least, flinching before the scariest of them all, the mighty spider. As one may imagine, this adventuring made finding shelter imperative. For those willing to look hard enough, a mighty cavernous cave may reveal itself. Unfortunately, in the case of these travelers, such shelter came with the shaking of the earth. As Thor investigated, the shelter of nights prior disappears behind him, his companions landing with a thud in its place. The source of such chaos? Well, see for yourself. For a mighty giant lay just around the corner. As hard as Thor tried, none of his aggressive blows held any effect upon the giant, whom now stood before the gods. Upon his hand, a glove that moments prior, acting much more a cave than an item of clothing. Yet rather than intend harm, the giant who shook the earth with his snoring merely desired company until a time in which their paths must part. And part they did as our heroes entered through the gates of Utgard, and with it into the halls of the giants. Thor, whose mission now made clear, stood before the king of the giants, demanding fealty at once. However, strangely, in the place of rage, a grand party commenced. In the presence of Mead, the thunder god's demands swiftly turned from hatred to competition. Poor, unlucky Thialfi, if only he had left Tengrisnir alone, he would not find himself in the midst of such a squabble. It was determined the god whom could eat the fastest, Loki, shall compete in an eating contest with what appeared to be a troll. Or was he just? For Loki was quickly defeated. Not only was the food on the troll's side of the table devoured, but with it the entire plate and all the cutlery. With Loki recovering from his food coma, the speedy Thialfi tried his hand at foot racing. For Thialfi was known as the fastest human in Midgard. His opponent, the king decreed, the magnificent Ugi, a giant who mustn't have been older than a mere toddler. Regardless, no matter how fast Thialfi ran, Ugi outpaced him. Enough, would screech the mighty Thor. It was one thing to humiliate Loki and Thialfi, but surely Thor himself could conquer such foolish games. First up, the simple task of emptying a drinking horn. Even the smallest of giants could empty such a horn in 3 gulps, assured the king. Thor drank and drank, but to no avail. Surely Thor could accomplish the following task, of lifting the cat whom the king explained was used in strength training of his own children. Strain as he might, not but a single paw left the ground. The final task which Thor now demanded is too easy to fail, assured the king. All the god must do, out-wrestle whom appeared to be the king's oldest of great-grandmothers. Such an old woman should be easy work for a god, yet the thunderous one was quickly driven to one knee. Abused and beaten, the games came to an abrupt end, and along with that, our companion's pleasantness. Prior to returning home, however, the shamed Thor would make one last attempt at making sense of such a crazy turn of events. Approach the king he did, and to his surprise, in a snap of fingers and a cacophony of laughter, the royal before them miraculously transformed himself. In the name of Odin, the giant the troop had traveled with a day prior now stood in the king's place. As Thor's anger grew and the trickster Loki's admiration of such deceit elevated, the giant, now known as Skirmir, explained the truth Thor sought. He was no king, but a mischievous giant. It was not a being Loki had eaten against, but that of fire itself. Nothing could outdevour flames. Thialfi raced not against a child, but against thought itself. Nothing can outpace thought. And worst of all, Thor's drinking cup was no mere horn. It was magically filled directly from the sea. The cat attached to the weight of the world serpent, and the wrinkly woman was no woman at all, but that of death incarnate. Nothing could drink dry the ocean, lift high the serpent, or avoid death's grasp. Yet now was not the time to address such intricacies, for Thor cared not for such magic, and thus desired to take his revenge. With a swing of his hammer, all was erased. In a flash, the illusion before them disappears. Thanks everyone so much for watching. Hopefully you had some fun here. Until the next adventure, keep being awesome. It's not what you think. Slut means end in Swedish. Definitely not calling you names.